So we have a quick joke-ish for you. Came across this response, thought you might get a kick out of it, and it does somewhat tie into what we're talking about today. So we're gonna play this as if it's a chat that went back and forth, and this did happen. Hey Jason, I'm happy to chat and help you however I can. What areas are most interesting for you?
Well, I live in Kansas right now, but I would definitely like to move to Houston, Lord willing. It would kind of depend on what works best for my wife and me.
Well, of course. I mean, it can feel tough to make all the puzzle pieces fit together. But if God's plan is for you to move to Houston, then we will be excited to have you. Speaking of those puzzle pieces, is a weekday evening an okay time to plan on setting up a time to chat with you and your wife?
Well, I actually haven't found my wife yet, and I know that whoever she is, she'll definitely have valuable thoughts and insights and ideas on what our home should look like.
Well, I guess it's probably a good thing that that agent asked a few more questions because otherwise we would have started showing houses without the wife who doesn't exist.
That is a theme for today. Okay, we should have a second poll up. Give you a minute to see if you recognize this gentleman. I'll give you a quick hint. His name is Stephen.
First we had a Jason, now we have a Stephen.
Now we have a Stephen. I will also tell you that he's not in Kansas. That's
okay. Does he have a wife?
So his name again is Stephen. San Francisco 2021. Stephen staring at his desk, staring at a tiny USB drive. Inside are 7,002 Bitcoins, worth at the time about $250 million. But there was just one problem. He couldn't remember his password. He typed it wrong. He typed it again wrong. The problem was that he only had 10 tries in total, or the drive would be permanently locked, and he had already tried 8 different times. He took a deep breath, entered old girlfriend names, pet names, first address. Nothing worked. $250 million locked inside a tiny USB with no ability to get it out because he couldn't remember the password. Now, although I don't think we have anybody on the phone who's made that kind of forgetful error, we do have experienced agents on this call, and we have new agents on the call. And the common denominator is we all forget. We all forget things sometimes, and at least, as my wife will tell me, I much more often than I should. Our goal today is to give you 3 things. 1, it's a framework. 2, it's a process. And 3, it's a tool to help make it easier for you to forget less and help your clients drive success.
So we had a client that emailed in and they're looking to buy and sell. And the email was very helpful. They gave us a lot of information. They talked about the time frame that they were thinking of selling and then buying, the location where they wanted to purchase, how they planned to pay for the house. Very, very helpful. And we responded by acknowledging all of those things. We commented, we can discuss marketing strategies and we can hit the ground running, and we're here to guide you through each step. Let us know as you finalize your plans and we can support you. And if you come up with any other thoughts or questions, please let us know. So my question to you is, was this a missed opportunity or was it a taken opportunity? And before we answer that question, first of all, I think we've all responded to emails that exact way. So let's talk about what the framework is and then go back to that story. And I can't take credit for this framework. This is certainly what I call OPI, other people's ideas. We do a lot of that here. But the framework is what we call the 4 C's. And it's pretty simple, and it starts with care. You hear the saying, they need to know how much you care for them to understand if you really want to interact and help them. Care is the basis of what we do. Then we move to curiosity, and I'm going to move through these pretty fast. Curiosity is about What matters most to you on the journey, and can I go deeper? Care and curiosity are the two cornerstones that a client will decide if they want to work with you. What most of us do, and I am certainly guilty of this, is we hop to step 3. Step 3 is the consult, where I begin to tell the client all the great things that I know, how smart I am, trying to woo them over with my brilliance and my expertise. If I never had the care and the curiosity to show them that I really value who they are as people, and that I'm curious to really understand what is it exactly that they need, then I can't really consult very well because I don't actually know them. So the consult piece is critical, but it's lost without care and curiosity. And
Paige, let me just double down on that. I think that that's such a wise comment is right. So many times when a client will tell us what they want or what they think they want, we react. And in that reaction, right, it comes across as I know or some of the information that's here. However, most of the clients don't buy a home more than maybe once a decade, maybe at least once every 5 years. And as realtors here, you're about 10 to 40 times a year. And so you're exactly right, is if you're not listening and giving care, it's really hard to be great at this stop of consulting. So Paige, what comes next?
The last is what we call close. Now, I hate this word, but we needed a C. So here we go. We, as real estate salespeople, we think close is about how do I close them? And that's not what this is about. This close is just like you're following up on a letter at the very end. In closing, in conclusion, that's what this means. And the way you put it into practice is what we say is the 4 most powerful words you'll ever hear in real estate, which is, well, Mr. Buyer, what happens next is, so we give them a path. And when we come from a place of we've cared about them, we've asked it out of curiosity why these things are important, we've been able to give some knowledge, then we're able to guide on what happens next. So let's go back to that story.
Oh, Paige, I just want to throw one data point in for the magic and the power of the words. We've sent about 1.5 million emails over the last 2 years. And what we found is that there's about a 3 times better response rate when the agent includes the here's what happens next, because that is one of the most powerful concepts that people are looking for if Guide Me on the Journey.
So let's go back to that story. Right? The client has emailed in. They have given us their timeline. They've talked about their location. They've talked about how they plan to finance it. We've given them some helpful words. We've told them that we can discuss marketing. We've told them we can hit the ground running. We've told them that we're here for them. So where was the care? Where was the curiosity in that? Did we ask any questions about why that time frame mattered or why those locations were what they were? Did we say any consulting in this process? Hey, this is a really great thought, and have you thought about blah? Did we close? Did we say, hey, this is great information, here's what happens next? Right? So I think we've shown that while this is a normal interaction that we have regularly with our clients, the response is something we've all done, but the reality is we didn't come from the pillars of the 4 C's. So what we actually did was we put the burden on the client to be the leader of their journey. And that client, as Bob says, buys or sells a home maybe once every 5 to 7 years. You all help people buy and sell homes all day, every day, 365 days a year. Of the 2, who do you think is a better leader of the process? Probably the agent. So speaking of the process, I don't care what you all decide your process is. We're going to share what ours looks like, but you have to have a process of what happens next. Because when you fail to prepare, you are preparing to fail. And you are putting your clients in a position where they're not going to achieve the goals as quickly or as helpfully as they possibly could because we didn't lead the process. So the process for us is, and Bob, I'm going to get your help here as we kind of go through this. The process is, Bob, there we go. This is how it looks for us. Again, I don't care what your process is. I'm just asking you to have a process. And the reason why is what most agents do is they have an initial conversation. They don't lead with the 4 C's. They certainly don't say, here's what happens next, which is where you see the bolded items on this is those are the opportunities for you to say, here's what happens next. What most agents do is they have the initial conversation and then they get to the home tours. What happens when you do that is then you have to go backwards up this ladder multiple times because you haven't actually gotten to the space where the buyer has the opportunity to explore. The process exists so the buyer can then sit and think about things in a way that they haven't done it. And when we rob them of this process, we rob them of the opportunity to make wise decisions. Bob, you want to talk through a little bit about what this process looks like for us?
I would say part of the way that we built it from, again, the initial conversation through the Zoom call is the advantage that you have in the Zoom call is you can diligence if they both fit your values, right? If it's somebody that you want to work with, and it gives you an opportunity to stand out and differentiate yourself. One of the best tips that we learned from a top team in California about 2 years ago was the steps to prepare before any meeting. And again, I think what most people are doing is they're sending a follow-up email or text from a conversation. But where great agents and where the process really stands out is if you do the additional 2 things that are on this slide. In addition to that follow-up email, it's send a calendar invite. This is especially true for professionals because they live on their calendar. It is a fantastic thing to have all the details, including your cell phone number, in the calendar because people will often forget. And if they're running late, it's an easy way for them to be able to identify and communicate that with you. And here's one of the best things that we've seen. We've had about an 80 to 90% response rate on this. This is one of the key things that we've put into practice over the last 18 months. And it's a video text. And the video text is very simple. And the video text says something like, hey, Paige, I'm so excited to see you today at noon when we're meeting at the Starbucks at the corner of Main and 22nd Street. And I have some great ideas for our tour, and I really look forward to seeing you soon. And of course, it's simple, it's easy, it's about 7 to 15 seconds. And it's one of those little differentiators before you show up that's going to make a world of difference because you're in the camp of being a professional. And then on the Zoom call, right, gives you an opportunity to listen more than anything else, and then also outline a process and a framework, and notably, here's what happens next.
So the way this process would work for us, for example, is that the initial conversation via email or phone, because your goal is to get to a phone conversation, it is a lot easier to show care and curiosity on a phone discussion, voice to voice, face to face, versus a text message exchange. But we recognize that that doesn't always happen in today's world, right? So the initial conversation is you're learning a little bit about them. You're showing some care. You're asking them when they say, I want a 3-bedroom house. Well, why is a 3-bedroom house important for you? Is it because they want a guest room and a home office? Or because they're expecting a baby and they need a place for the nanny to stay, right? So understanding from that curiosity point what they need, then you drive it to the next stage is what is the consult that you can give them in the initial conversation that's brief. And then your answer from that is, well, look, here's what happens next. We would love to sit down with you via Zoom to explore more about your journey so that we can tailor it to what meets your needs. Let's set a 30-minute Zoom call on Wednesday at 4:30. Does that work for you and your wife? again, assuming that, going back to our initial conversation, that Jason has a wife. They say yes. Great. You hang up the phone. You send a follow-up email and a text thanking them for their time and sending the details of that Zoom call, and you follow up with a calendar invite. The reason why you do these things is because this is what sets you apart as a professional, and it tells your buyers that you are a serious person. You're
Paige,
not messing around. You're not kind of going through the motions.
I love that. And I think, again, what you just hit on is the core theme. Because, Red, I can see the faces of some of the crowd, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is a ton. I don't do anything like this process. And the answer is that's exactly right. And the reason that you want to follow a robust process is so you can win before you arrive. Because when you step into the Zoom call or you step into that first meeting and you've gone through a conversation, a follow-up email, a calendar invite, a video text message, sending them content, they're going to be like, I've never seen a real estate agent deliver such a professional process. You clearly must know what you're doing.
We send that video text reminder the day before to confirm the appointment. And the reason why it needs to go the day before is that you should always reconfirm your appointments the day before. Makes sense, right? Because sometimes life happens, or people schedule changed, or they didn't intend to meet with you anyway. Wouldn't you rather know that the day before so you can reallocate your time appropriately than finding out 2 minutes before the Zoom call is set up and you've spent all of this time prepping for that? So your confirmation video text goes out the day before, and then your 15 to 30-minute Zoom call happens at whatever time you have set. We could spend 30 minutes diving into what we do in that Zoom call. We don't have the time for that today. But the goal is for us, this is where we set the expectation of learning more about what they want and then helping them understand what the process is. That's the consult part of it. And then explaining how they hire us. We have them hire us before we get to the strategy session. The reason we do that is because if they don't want to work with us, and that's okay, if I spend all of my time in consult mode, giving them all of my information, and then they don't hire us, then we've had a lost opportunity. So we ask our clients to sign documents, which means on that Zoom call, here's what happens next, Mr. Buyer. We're going to follow up with you with some documents to get your autograph that allows us to work together. And also, what does your schedule look like on Saturday at 10 a.m. for us to sit down and have a really in-depth strategy session to lay out your process? Right? When you set the goal and start with these foundations, you're not in a position where you're showing houses and then you realize, wow, I didn't have all the information and I've wasted 3 months of their life not understanding what they were really trying to achieve.
And I would say if you take only one thing away from this presentation today, it's the 15 to 30-minute Zoom call. Drive people to that session. And if you take only 2 things away, it's send a video text reminder before the Zoom call or before your in-person meeting, and you'll be shocked at how much that helps you in the first 7 seconds when you're in the room.
We could also spend another hour on strategy sessions and getting your ducks in a row. But I want to go back to the story of we've had the client email in. They've talked about their timeline. They've talked about their location. They've talked about their finances. We've gone to a little bit of consulting mode. We haven't gone to care. We haven't gone to curiosity. We certainly haven't gone to close. Bob, what happens? How was this? What did we do wrong?
I think the big thing, just as you say here, is it wasn't a clear process. There was no what happens next. There was no let me drive you to a Zoom. There was no if it was difficult to drive you to a Zoom, let me drop something off at your house. There was no ability to drive the process. We're just hoping, and again, hope is not a strategy, that those people don't just walk into an open house and buy with the listing agent, or that those people don't decide to go a different direction, or that they might hopefully make good decisions, but we weren't there to guide them on the way to help them make a better decision.
Mm-hmm. What we've essentially done is set ourselves up to be reactive and not proactive. We have not set ourselves up to be the leader. We have set ourselves up to be feng shui. Like, well, what do you want to see? When do you want to do it? Sure, I'll be happy to open the door. There's no opportunity to have guided them to ensure that they are actually making the right decisions to meet the timelines, to meet the locations, and to meet the financing goals that they laid out.
Okay. So you ready to talk about the tool?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So the key tool that we recommend you use, and again, as part of your win before you arrive process, is your buyer guide. And in the buyer guide, we highly, highly, highly recommend 6 core functional steps and or pages that you include to give you a reminder of when you're nervous and meeting with someone and running, that you don't miss any of these 6 components. Component number 1, and I would say if your guide included nothing but this is the single most important page. And the first page in our guide is the listening tool. And the listening tool is how you remember to ask the important questions, right? What matters most to you? Get an answer, ask why. Get an answer, ask why. Get an answer, ask why. And the more that you can get as part of their story of what matters the most, the second most, the third most, and ultimately what they're looking for in an agent, the better you're going to be able to deliver value, because it's the way that you show care and curiosity by asking questions. And so if, again, you take nothing else away from this presentation besides drive it to a Zoom meeting, send a video text, the third one would be in your listing presentation or your buyer presentation, make sure you have a tool that allows you to actively listen. And don't skip that step. Other page that we really like and recommend is who you are. You get into better value when you talk about the benefits you bring, right? The difference on advantages or this is what we do or features, this is who we are. Ultimately, benefits are one of 2 things. 1, we save you time, or 2, we save you money. This was, Paige, you said this was the HAR president last year who bought a house, and he said, he bought 13 houses and not a single agent ever told him what they were going to do to help buy or sell a house.
And that's from the CEO of HAR.
CEO of HAR, which probably has met a couple agents. One of the things that, again, will set you apart is an overall what you do list, because the average time that the consumer thinks the agent spends on helping to buy a house is about 12 to 15 hours. And the actual number of hours an agent spends to help buy a house is, Paige, double check my math. I thought it was between 75 and 125 hours.
Depending on, it's around 75 for 5 houses shown, give or take. And right, I understand why they think that, because you probably do spend 12 hours in total face-to-face with them. And so if they don't see you, then you must not be working for them. And the reality is we work all the time for them. We work very hard for them. We do a tremendous amount of diligence on their behalf so that they can make the right decisions for them and their households. We just don't always show that.
And again, when you're talking through the disc profile, typically your Ds care more about the page on the left and your SCs care a lot more about the page on the right. Also, other thing that we highly recommend that you bring in order to both add value and consult well is data and trends. And then back to Paige's comment of the what happens next is give yourself an opportunity to not forget the conversation of what happens next by having a roadmap. You, again, through your consult process and listening, you may need to change some steps, but the beauty of having a roadmap or the beauty of having a plan is that you can always change it as long as you have one. So here's the really good news out of everything that you've heard, because I'm sure your mind goes is, oh my gosh, that's a lot. The good news is that this is really, really, really simple and easy as long as you follow the framework, the process, and use the tool. We have one agent who joined us about 120 days ago. He had 9 contracts and 2 closings. And we've had another one who joined us about 70 days ago, and he has 3 listings and 1 contract. And I'm just going to, again, tell you a story of how this comes together, right? One of our agents, one of the 2 that I just mentioned, standing outside of a townhome in Houston's inner loop, waiting for buyers to arrive from Atlanta. And he knows as he's standing there waiting for them to arrive for Atlanta, it's not the first time that he's seen them because their journey started weeks earlier on Zoom. And in that first strategy session, he was able to listen, give care, ask about their work, ask about their lifestyle, ask about what they wanted in a new home. What they thought they wanted was to live in Houston suburbs. But he helped them refine their vision, ensure that they felt confident before their visit. He talked through market trade-offs. He talked through commute. He talked through Houston's traffic. He talked through the nuances that you wouldn't have if you're buying a house once a decade in a different city. And with the focus on the inner loop, he could give them tools and resources, buyer guide, 9 Kisses of Death, talk about climate change, talk about the different flood risk, which again gets into our news. And rather than just show them homes, could set clear expectations what the process is and be comfortable. In the first meeting, it was with a client who'd chosen to work with him because he demonstrated that he had the ability to win before he showed up. And ultimately, the benefit that that brought to the client is that they felt that this journey was no longer overwhelming. It felt like home.
Well, and not only that, Bob, the reality is they had a time frame in which they needed to be in a home. And had they taken the journey where they just started looking at homes and then backtracked through the process, they would have lost weeks and weeks of valuable time, which would have put them in a very hardship position. So the agent did all the right things by giving care, leaning into curiosity, consulting, and then helping them understand here's what happens next.
Okay, Paige, you want to talk about what we have that happens next?
Okay, real quick, we've got a quick poll that just popped up. We're doing our upcoming market data presentation on, gosh, the 21st. So if you've got some questions, we'd love your feedback there. For our team, you can see that we've got a fair amount of busy schedule this February and March. So please mark your calendars for our team. We'll send those dates out to you so you have them.
I also wanted to hit on the 17th from 4 to 6. That's the best pickup time on Mondays from tracking how many contacts you've got to make in terms of when people answer the phone. We have a special guest that is joining us for the Power Hour that makes about 100 calls a day, has some really neat tips and tactics. And I think that that's going to be a lot of fun and a really impactful event.
Perfect.
It's the other event, or again, the other event that we have, please be sure you're reaching out to your past clients and those people who are sending you referrals. We have our Bubbles, Bourbon, and Barbecue event in March. Paige has been doing a lot of planning on that, and it should be a phenomenal impact. We have had a phenomenal response rate individually from reaching out to about 100, 150 people and spurring a lot of conversations, helping out for the spring.
Perfect. Well, we're going to get out of here 2 minutes early. Here's what happens next. If you'd like to join us on our upcoming market update, here's how you can get registered. But we appreciate your time. We know there's lots of other places you could have had coffee this morning. We're grateful that you spent it with us. And we will see you on Friday the 21st.